welcome to Human Ascension with Ellie. I've recently made a little change to the things that I talk about and what I do on the Ellie Dreams and Under channel on YouTube. And today I'm actually going to be talking to one of the things that I noticed, which is the reason why I made that change. And so it's all interchangeable a little bit. The things that I present on this show together with the way that I try to conduct myself. I'm trying to live by example. And so it's not always easy. I am human and sometimes I falter and sometimes I'm tempted to falter, but I'm doing my best and it gets easier every day. And actually on this particular occasion, it has sort of become quite satisfying. I feel as though I've been released from something. And that's something that I want to talk to you about. So those of you who know me quite well because you've been following me through a variety of different forums probably already know me and my motivations and what brought me into media in the first place. But then again, there are those of you who don't know because the people who are following the radio show or who are following me on YouTube are going to be coming and going. There's going to be a change. And actually, I've even noticed that the demographic of the channel is changing a little bit as well. People from different parts of different countries, different age groups, the gender shift has kind of changed a little bit. You can even notice it in comments and things that people are a little bit different and they sometimes have a different mindset. I think it's really lovely. But what it means is that not everyone knows my story. Now, this is not going to be an episode about my story, but it is going to include just a little bit of background so that you know the context with which I'm coming from. So I ended up working in media after working for a very long time in other sectors, including policing, which I worked in policing for over a decade, closer to a decade and a half, actually. And I also worked in other areas of entertainment. I've worked in all kinds of fields, but, mostly it was, I worked in television, I worked in the performing arts, and also policing, and I've worked in other short-term roles as I was younger and things like most people do. But this stint recently, over the past 5 years that I've been working in media in the way that I do, it all stems from a prophecy that I saw 20 years ago, back when I was about 20. What am I talking about? It was 40 years ago, back when I was about 20. That just goes to show I'm so old. Anyway, I saw a prophecy. I was at a friend's house. You know what it's like. You see a pamphlet sitting on a coffee table. You pick it up. You look it through. You either read it or you flick through it or whatever. It's kind of stupid. You roll your eyes and you just move on. And that's exactly what I did at the age of 20. But for some reason, I didn't forget that prophecy. It was embedded into my brain, which is really surprising. I was with the fellow that I ultimately married and then divorced. So he was destined to become my ex-husband at some point later in our lives. And we were waiting for friends. We were actually at a friend's house and we were waiting for them to get ready so that we could all go out. I can't remember the name of the friends. I can't remember where we went that night or what we ate or what we drank. Chances are there were lots of cocktails involved because that was back in Australia, gosh, in the 80s when cocktails were a really reasonable price. Do you know, this is a total sidebar, but do you know how much cocktails cost in Australia right now? I'm just outside of Melbourne on the Mornington Peninsula in the state of Victoria, and the average cocktail in Australia is $30. $30. Can you believe that? It's absolute bonkers, and they aren't even big cocktails. They're not like American cocktails. I know in the time that I lived in America, and in particular when I lived in, never lived in New York, but in particular when I visited New York, the cocktails were beautiful and big. And of course, don't get me started on the Vegas cocktails, but anyway, I've had cocktails in New York City. And I gather now they probably cost somewhere in the vicinity of $15, $16, $17, something like that. But you know what? When I was in America, and I remember drinking cocktails in New York, they were generous and they were generally well made. They were worth the money that you spend. But over here in Australia, the cocktails are rubbish, absolute rubbish, and they are seriously expensive. Okay, so I don't even know why I'm talking about this. I sound like a bit of a plonker, to be honest. So let's move on. All right, so now you know what my pastimes are. So my point is that, because I did have a point, my point is that I can't remember what I ate or what I drank or who the people were that I was waiting for with my soon-to-be ex-husband. But I can remember the house that we were at. I even remember exactly where it was, which street it was on, and the position of where the house was. I remember the layout of the rooms that I was in, which wasn't much, probably just the living room, kitchen and bathroom, I would guess. I don't think I went into any bedrooms or anything like that. But I remember that layout. I remember where the front door was relative to the living room. I know where I was sitting on the sofa, where the coffee table was. Isn't that weird? And I remember the prophecy, practically every single word of the prophecy. There are a couple of words that I'm kind of stuck on, and the exact phrasing, now that I'm writing a book about it, the exact phrasing, I'm getting very, very close with the phrasing, but I do know that there's probably a little bit of a margin of error there. But gosh, my recollection of the prophecy is just extraordinary, given that it was 40 years ago and that I was a 20-ish-year-old when I read it. I mean, it's the reason why I work in media now, because of that prophecy. The prophecy appears to be coming true, and this happens from time to time. It starts to come true, and then it kind of dies off for a little while, and then it reemerges and begins again, and then it dies off again. But this time it is unfolding exactly as stated all those years ago, and it seems to be progressing far beyond what I've previously seen. And I've been following this prophecy for a very long time. 40 years is when I saw it. And so I'm now in the middle of writing a book about that prophecy, and I'm trying to work as quickly as possible, which means that I have kind of slowed down a little bit when it comes to recording on the Ellie Dreams and Under channel, because I need to make sure that this book is available for people to read by the middle of 2025. I am determined that I'm going to get this book out in record speed, because I have a funny feeling that it's time limited, and that having read the book might make a difference to our trajectory. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, but you know what? I'm not going to take any chances. I'm writing the book. And so that's what I'm working on a lot. I'm still on the Ellie Dreams Under channel. I'm still doing these episodes here as well, but I'm very focused on that book. The good news is I have been collecting evidence about the prophecy for years, which means all I have to do is turn around. My filing cabinet is just there to my right, and I've got a lot of information in there. All I have to do is bundle it together and present it in a narrative that someone other than me is going to understand. So that's what I'm currently working on. And I am 100% committed to having this book ready for people to read by the middle of the year. Hold me to that, because I am determined. Okay. So what concerns me is that while everyone is focusing on things like tabloid spirituality, I think, there you go, there's a term, we are missing the bigger picture. People seem to be focusing on, clickbait spirituality. It's either AI generated with a punchy kind of headline, or it's and it's very superficial in content, or it's designed to sort of anger and shock and gain algorithms and things like that. And we've kind of lost this organic aspect of learning and research and communication. And yes, I use a script, but you may have noticed I don't stick to it very well. I kind of have moments where I do and moments where I trail off, and this is one of those moments. So, let me just get back into being professional. Today's topic is part of that bigger picture that so many of us might be missing as we're chasing the tabloid. We don't know that it is tabloid, but there is a tabloidy aspect to spirituality these days that you kind of have to wade through in order to get to the real stuff where people are really imparting wisdom or are trying to understand and share that understanding with people. And I feel that challenge just as much as anyone else, because it's so easy to just fall into a kind of a rotation system that appears to be algorithmic in nature. So this is where the channel has kind of overlapped onto the show here. People may have noticed that I'm kind of focused on something in particular. And I've changed the format of my videos, and I've changed the types of discussions that I'm having. on this show and on the channel and everything. And the two things that I'm working on seem to be very much more in alignment than they were before, because last year this show was presenting a certain side of me, and then the channel was kind of not quite gelling. And I think they gel a lot better now than they did before. But this is all really related to the prophecy and me wanting to live by example and do the right thing, regardless of how challenging it might be in the short term. I actually think that something very obvious is taking place right under our noses. We can smell it. We know that it's there. It's hard to kind of know how it fits into our lives and the impact that it's going to have. And so that's what I want to discuss today. And while we are fighting with each other and our differences and criticizing each other and hunting for content online that's going to confirm our biases so that we can feel knowledgeable and good and right and kind of better than the other guy, it's happening right there under our noses. And the thing is, it was predicted thousands of years ago. It really was, by more than one group of people. And the groups that predicted this didn't agree with each other, but they did kind of agree on this. And it's also predicted in the prophecy, which is the reason why I feel a sense of urgency to get this book out. I have been talking about the prophecy for the 5 years or so. Actually, gosh, on April 26th this year, it's going to be 5 years that I've been on YouTube. More than a year since I've had this show, but 5 years that I've been on YouTube. I barely even knew what YouTube was 5 years ago. There you go. I was very much out of touch. But the prophecy brought me onto YouTube. I have been chasing it ever since, and more so now than ever before, because it does seem to be unfolding. And I am beginning to believe, actually, you know what? It's not even a beginning. I believe that it's unfolding because we are making it unfold. We are. We are being played by a very powerful group of somebodies. Have you noticed I haven't called them people or entities or creatures or whatever? We're being played by a very powerful group of somebodies who are pushing us to be exactly as we are right now. It's not our decision. I think it's theirs. I think that we are being duped. Maybe not all of us, but many of us are being duped. And we're being duped in a way where we are the ones who make the future happen in exactly the way that a more powerful group of somebodies wants it to happen. So this, I think, is how it's working. And I'm not saying this lightly because I've been looking into this and looking into this and looking into this from lots of perspectives. And I'm also using my education because I have a degree in public policy and how things work. And so, you know, why not earn my keep by using my education just a little bit? As of today, I have to say that I think capitalism is over. I do. And socialism is over. They might return, but right now they're over. You may not feel it exactly as it's going to feel soon, but there might be a little quiver that's just right under the surface of your skin that is a little bit like a whisper through your body that's telling you that the rug that you've been standing on all this time is being secretly and slowly pulled out from under you. That little whisper, you might even want to ignore that little whisper, but that whisper is your intuition, and I think it's right. If you're feeling that, I think it's because your intuition is right. It's telling you something. So today I'm going to be talking about the techno-oligarchy that appears to be taking over America. And when something takes over America, it's just a matter of time before it spreads and takes over everywhere else. One nation at a time, kicking and screaming, but one at a time, and basically America's first and then the rest. It isn't what you voted for if you're an American, and it doesn't really matter who you voted for. The techno-oligarchy is not what you voted for, but it appears that it is in full deployment. And the purpose of its deployment is to dismantle most of the things that you've been standing on, like that rug that provide you with a solid base to live on, whether you are conservative or liberal in your viewpoint. It's affecting everyone. The techno-oligarchy is dismantling both of those functions, that capitalist function, the conservative kind of foundation, and then the socialist function, the liberal foundation. And if you think that sounds sinister, well, it should sound sinister, because I feel that it is sinister. And I think that quiver, that little whispery, quivery thing that people might be feeling, feels like it's an intuitive sense of something sinister. A techno-oligarchy is a structure of wealth and economy in which those who own the technology make the technology invaluable to those who don't own the technology. And then they use that invaluable need for technology as a way to control the citizenry, to control the population. Meanwhile, the techno-oligarchs reap the rewards. They consolidate power. They get richer because obviously they're not rich enough already, and they become more powerful. They become kind of invincible. First, they destroy everything that already provides a foundation for the people. And then once that's been destroyed, once it's dismantled, everything that currently exists that has been destroyed, well, as it happens, the techno-oligarchy will then become heroes and replace it with something else, something that perhaps they own, like technology. And the population will be thrilled when this happens, because by the time it happens, they will have been begging to be saved by something. And what comes to save them is this system of technology, a digital existence, because that's the only foundation left to draw from. And because it comes with so many promises of a better life, a better world, a new world, a brand new shiny world run by technology and the people who own the technology. So let me explain this from the best place to start. We're going to do a little bit of public policy 101. Like I said, I've got a degree in this, and so I may as well use my degree. My mother will be very proud because my education obviously wasn't cheap. All right. So techno-oligarchy. So in a nutshell, a techno-oligarchy, which could also be called, techno-feudalism, for example, is when a democratic government in which the combination of right-leaning capitalist policies and left-leaning socialist policies is replaced with privatized, non-democratic digital power centers. So it replaces the right and the left mechanisms of a democratic government with a privatized, digitized version. At the moment, America's democracy relies on both right-leaning capitalist viewpoints or mechanisms and left-leaning socialist mechanisms to survive. They work together as a mixed economy. I know that it's difficult to understand that without an explanation, especially if you've kind of picked a side in politics and you consider the other guy to be the bad guy. So let me just give you a really brief explanation. I'm going to start with the political right. So the political right often believes strongly in capitalism because it emphasizes individual freedom, personal responsibility, and limited government intervention. Capitalism is kind of perceived to be a system that rewards hard work, innovation, and entrepreneurship. The right side of the spectrum argues that free markets lead to economic growth, job creation, and overall prosperity. They believe that competition drives efficiency and innovation, ultimately benefiting society as a whole. Also, the right side of the spectrum tends to prioritize things like property rights and the protection of individual liberties, which are core principles of capitalism. Okay, so that's basically that the political right side of the spectrum and capitalism. So now let's look at the political left side of the spectrum. In contrast to the right-leaning capitalist beliefs, the political left often believes strongly in socialism because socialism emphasizes social equality, collective responsibility, and government intervention in order to address economic or social issues that may be causing some problems. Socialism is considered by the left to be a system that helps to reduce income inequality and provide universal access to essential services like healthcare or education. And also it helps to ensure a fair distribution of wealth. So it helps to avoid monopolies that could be exploiting the vulnerable people in a society. The left tends to argue that capitalism can lead to exploitation, and also things like social injustice and economic inequalities. The left also tends to believe that government intervention is necessary, sometimes in order to regulate markets, protect worker rights, and provide a safety net for the most vulnerable members of society. Now, it's not always this cut and dry, okay, because politics and political beliefs are really complex and everybody is unique. They have their own unique set of values, which includes their unique set of political values. Some people are single issue people, and some people are left or right across the board. Personally, when I'm talking about myself, I would say that I'm somewhere in the middle. I do have left-leaning tendencies, like I believe that everyone should be given an equal chance to build a good life for themselves and their family. But I also believe that personal responsibility is a burden that every person should bear to some degree, because it builds character and also a stronger country for the next generation to be able to inherit and enjoy it as well. And I believe that business and government should continuously serve as a check and balance against each other so that neither of them get too big or turn into some kind of a overarching monopoly. Right. So I guess I'm kind of middle. Right. So the next thing is to understand how the left and the right work together in a mixed economy such as the United States. So first of all, we have to kind of know exactly what democracy is. And I know it sounds like I'm kind of preaching to people who already know, because most people did more American schooling than I did. Okay, I got my education in America, by the way. My university or my undergraduate education is from America. So these are things that I did learn kind of as a pseudo-American at the time. So we have to know what democracy is, because it's not always obvious, especially if you're watching the news or any kind of social media, because it has been kind of reinterpreted in a way to suit a variety of different agendas. Democracy, right? Now, I'm not a dictionary, so, I'm going to be saying this for the ingestion of something else, for a topic that I'm talking about. But democracy is a system of government in which power is vested in the people. That's basically it. That's a democracy. So when you hear someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, otherwise known as AOC, say, and I'm going to quote her, when you hear her say, "Our democracy is designed to speak truth to power," which is something that she's actually said. What she's saying is that it's important to hold powerful people accountable, and the only way to do that is to make sure that the voice of the ordinary people remains strong. This includes the powerful people inside the country and the powerful influences from outside the country. That's what she's talking about when she says truth to power. The truth is the ordinary people. The power is the elites and the people who, like foreign countries and things like that. In AOC's ideal United States of America, the country governs itself and uses the voice of the ordinary people to make those governing decisions. Okay, so that's that perspective. And when you hear Steve Bannon, totally different person, when you hear Steve Bannon say, and this is a direct quote from him, "We are a constitutional republic, not a democracy." That's an exact quote from him, right? What he says sounds on the face of it to be in full disagreement to what AOC has said. But is it? So this is Steve Bannon's ideology where it's relevant to today's show, which is based on the principles of nationalism and populism. Nationalism is about defining who the country is. And yes, that might mean things like defining its primary language, religion and belief system and traditions and things like that. Okay, but it's not just that. Nationalism is also about self-determination, which means that the country governs itself without any external influence. And populism is about being people-centric, which means that the power comes from the ordinary people and that the voice of the ordinary people should be the voice of power to keep elites and powerful individuals from being able to monopolize the country and its direction of travel. In Steve Bannon's ideal United States, the country governs itself and uses the voice of the ordinary people to make those governing decisions. I'm going to say that again, okay, so that you can hear what I did. In AOC's ideal United States, the country governs itself and uses the voice of the ordinary people to make those governing decisions. And in Steve Bannon's ideal United States, the exact same thing is true. The country governs itself and uses the voice of the ordinary people to make those governing decisions. Now, I know there are going to be plenty of people watching or listening to today's show who hate AOC or hate Steve Bannon, right? And yes, they are polar opposites. That's the reason why I chose them as examples, because regardless of the messy details about how America should do it this way or that way, and, even pointing at individuals and character flaws and things like that, both AOC and Bannon are both fundamentally in the same belief system when you get high up above and look down. They fundamentally believe in the same overarching principle of people power. People power. So whether we call it a democracy or a populist republic, it really doesn't matter, because they are both centered on the overarching principle of people power. People power. Okay, so this is my point today. Okay, you ready? The techno-oligarchy has its bullseye directly aligned to America's people power, both democratic and populist. So hopefully I have your attention now. Okay, so now let's look at how America's system of balancing its right-leaning capitalist and populist culture against its left-leaning socialist and democratic culture, and how that's actually beneficial to both sides of the people power equation. So let's look at the right first, okay? So for right-leaning capitalists, individual property rights are generally protected. Entrepreneurs and businesses can invest and grow without fear of something like a government asset seizure taking place and suddenly stripping them unexpectedly of everything they've worked hard to achieve. Free markets are protected, which allows businesses to compete and innovate, supporting small businesses by giving people the power to vote for local lawmakers who arose from small businesses themselves and who understand the need for business owners to make their own decisions in order to thrive. And a country that maintains its ordinary people power is stable because it relies on a lot of votes to get anything done, which means it's really hard to shift that mountain. So the country is a predictable economic platform for consumers and businesses and investors. Okay, and on this note, I'm going to give you an example from this week's news to illustrate this. The stock market has been really wobbly lately, and on the day that I'm recording today's show, I've picked up a screenshot from today's news. The headline of the screenshot, which should be on the screen now for those who are watching, comes from My Prescription to Ground News, which is an algorithm-generated news platform that gives readers the news from every available perspective. I'm addicted to it, and I'm also an affiliate. Okay, so you'll see on this screenshot that Donald Trump's trade tariff fighting with Canada and other countries is causing the stock market to wobble. This is a direct hit to the predictable economic platform that consumers and businesses and investors need in order to benefit from right-leaning capitalist agenda items. Okay, so I'm going to read it for those who can't see it. The headline says, Wall Street falls in a manic day after briefly dropping more than 10% below its record. The US stock market fell further Tuesday following President Donald Trump's latest escalation in his trade war, briefly pulling Wall Street 10% below its record set last month. And like it's been for most of the past few weeks, the market slide on Tuesday was erratic and dizzying. So this is a summary headline that takes into account the reporting of lots of competing news sources from the left and from the right and from the centre. It's one of those positive algorithmic tools that we have available to us that allow us to see all sides of the story. And that's the reason why I like Ground News, and I'm always singing their praises. I do have an affiliate link that will give you 40% off a subscription right now. So if you're interested, take a look at the description for today's episode, and that's where you'll find the link. I've left it there. Okay, so now let's go back and see now how America's system of balancing its left-leaning socialist democratic culture and its right-leaning capitalist populist culture, balancing that is beneficial to the other side, to the socialist side, in this people power equation. Okay, so for socialists, the system allows, this mixed economy system allows for the most vulnerable in society to be protected by safety net programs. Things like healthcare, education, and government services are all examples of those safety nets. The mixed system also allows ordinary people to get a voice, which helps to level the playing field for everybody, so that powerful people can't take it all away from those who really need it. And the system gives people the right to organise and advocate. I was being too Australian there, and to advocate for social or economic changes. Without a democratic system, just a small number of powerful elites would have a say-so about things that was very heavily weighted, and the people who need a voice would have to put up and shut up, basically. So I'm going to show you another screenshot from Ground News that illustrates this other side of the spectrum. And I've deliberately pointed to how it's being described by the right, even though it relates to something that is favoured by the left. It's the possible threats against social security that are appearing in recent news. So I'm going to read the headline here, and it says, Musk eyes Social Security and benefit programs for cuts while claiming widespread fraud. And here it says that polling indicates that about half of Americans viewed Musk's prominent role in the Trump administration negatively, according to a mid-February poll. This is being reported by the right, by the way, and that Elon Musk criticized Social Security as the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time during an interview. And then the rest of all of that, if you are watching and you can see that I haven't quoted, it is basically the miscommunication of figures. So Elon Musk has suggested cutting the federal benefits program, aiming for reductions of between $500 billion and $700 billion. And also he estimated the amount of fraud in entitlements as significantly exceeding what was documented by a recent Social Security Inspector General report, which was around about $71.8 billion. And so he kind of seems to have fudged the numbers a bit in order to get his point across. So I think we can all agree that Elon Musk is not one of the ordinary people that fit within the definitions of populism or democracy. He's also not an elected politician. He's one of the techno giant leaders. He owns probably the biggest techno empire in America and probably around the world, actually. And he is reportedly the richest man in the world as well. So he obviously has no need for Social Security. But everyone else does. And Elon Musk is threatening to cut federal benefits, which include Social Security and Medicare. And the only thing standing in his way right now is the mixed power of democratic populism. And of course, the Constitution of the United States. But you see, without the power of the people, someone rich and powerful could just decide that America doesn't have a constitution anymore. And that would be the end of that. So the power of the people is the thing that's standing in the way and allowing the Constitution of the United States to exist. So people power is the first and foremost power that America has, whether it's interpreted to be the nationalist, capitalist populism or the democratic socialism side of the spectrum. And when they work together, America and the American people, combining the forces of left and right, are a formidable force, a very, very strong force. So I've talked about how we might disagree. Some people are right-leaning and conservative capitalists. Some people are left-leaning democratic socialists. But together, everyone is people power, real people power. And America currently operates as that mixed economy, drawing from both sides of the political spectrum to maintain its strength and to protect its people. It has a free enterprise. It enjoys minimal government intervention. Well, at the moment, I'm not as sure as before, but so far the government is still accountable to the court system and voting rights and things like that. It also has social welfare programs, and it has public services like education, infrastructure, and emergency services. And so my question is, and I think a lot of people are asking this question at this moment in time, why is a single tech billionaire waving around a chainsaw that he claims that he's going to use on all of the government departments? And why is he living at Mar-a-Lago at the taxpayer's expense, or even not at the taxpayer's expense, at around $2,000 a night? And why is he even interested in having this made-up job in this made-up department of government? I don't get it. I mean, Doge isn't even a thing. It's not a government department. It's just a four-letter word that claims to be about something, but it's just a thing. And it actually is the same word as the crypto that's being pushed as well. It's very strange. The government is accountable to checks and balances in a functioning democracy and a national populist republic as well. But Doge isn't accountable to anyone because it doesn't fall within that government structure. The only thing that Doge is accountable to is Elon Musk. Why is that? And why is Elon waving his threats around in other countries like Germany and the UK? I think the other day he said to the British public that the leader of one of their parties was covering up a sex crime and he was going to come and rescue them. All they had to do was ask and he'd be on a plane. I mean, what's that about? And what does it even mean? I mean, what does it mean? What is Elon doing? Well, I have a theory for you on what he's doing, potentially. There is a possibility that he is deliberately destroying America's people power so that he and other techno oligarchs can be heroes and bring in their own system to replace everything with like a digital carrot and stick kind of technology. And that digital carrot and stick system that I'm talking about, you know, I'm going to tell you now, it was predicted thousands of years ago by more than one group. And it was also predicted in that prophecy that I've been chasing for 4 decades that I talked about at the top of this show. The world's richest man has been hard at work manifesting his dark desire to create a post-capitalist, post-socialist, post-populist, post-nationalist, post-democratic world order. A new world order run by technology. If you were here with me last week, then you'd know that last week I did an episode on the Gnostic Gospel of John. It was part 3 in a series of 3 episodes on the Gospel of John, the Apocryphon of John, actually. the gospel that was banned by the church. And yes, I'm going to suddenly switch gears because of course I am. That's one of the things I love the most about doing this show. The whole point here is to show you that this is not an accident. It's not just some wild and wacky techo billionaire who is playing around for fun. It was predicted, and it has a name. And the name is archontic control. So let's get woo-woo for a moment so that I can explain this to you. The principle of archontic control was raised briefly in last week's show because I knew that this week I was going to be demonstrating to you how it works against us today and how many people have fallen into its trap. Maybe even you have fallen into its trap. Definitely not me. I definitely haven't because I can see it for what it is, and I'm going to explain that to you shortly. And that's why I've changed a few things about how I present myself and my YouTube channel and this show, quite frankly. So let's begin by understanding what we're talking about. Archontic control. Okay, so in the Gnostic belief system, archontic control is when something non-human gets control over humanity. The Gnostics believe that beings called archons are malevolent creatures who control the earth and influence human thoughts and feelings and actions. In the Gnostic belief system, archons are seen as agents of the demiurge, which is kind of like a Yahweh figure from the Old Testament, you know, that kind of mean guy who created the material world. And the archons are described as having bodies that are both male and female with faces resembling beasts. They are considered to be forces of chaos and are responsible for the evil thoughts and actions of humankind. The Gnostics believe that the archons created humans to be highly susceptible to their influence, making it very difficult for people to resist their control. The only thing that can help humanity from escaping from archonic control by the archons is a divine spark from heaven, apparently, which exists in only a few people. That divine spark can be spread to others, and it helps people to resist the temptations that are created by these evil archons. People in this scenario are considered to be puppets of the archons to play with, basically. And it all gets kind of biblical from that point on, and the belief is that the archons use material temptations to keep humanity living in a stage of ongoing demonic possession. Right. So don't take any of the words literally about it being a demon and things like that, because a lot of the words, when I look at these things, I'm not suddenly becoming biblical on you. I'm not suddenly falling into the mindset of those days. I'm looking at the language and I'm automatically translating it into our current understanding. Because back in the day when anything was written, thousands of years ago, the words that were being used and the descriptions and the articulations and interpretations were based on the experiences of the people who were doing the writing. And I keep that in mind. But yes, the Gnostics believed that archons and archontic control was the way in which a malevolent force could use temptation to keep people imprisoned. Right. So I'm going to be talking about this in more detail in later episodes because it crosses over into lots of other territory as well, and there is so much more. But for now, let's just say that the only remedy that humanity has in order to fight the archons and their archontic control is knowledge. That's it. The gnosis, the knowledge. And it's the kind of knowledge that you find inside yourself. It's the kind of knowledge that's like that intuition that whispers to you, the one that whispers under your skin, that AOC and Steve Bannon are on completely different sides of the spectrum and they probably hate each other's guts, but they have one thing in common, and that is the desire for true people power. And they're both right in that respect. Meanwhile, there is an offensive against people power taking place right now, and the techno-oligarchy is on our heels. The oligarchy is accumulating power by destroying the very things that give people their power. And then they come back as heroes with something non-human to replace it with, and are a content control that will dominate humanity. And that weapon is already being used to keep some of us. Actually, you know what? That weapon is probably being used to keep most of us in submission already. And actually, the techno-oligarchs aren't even doing it to us directly. They're giving us the tools so that we can do it to ourselves. Did you ever think that that could be possible? That somebody would have the forethought to hand you a weapon that you could use against yourself? And you kind of think like they're doing you a favor. And many of us are greedily grabbing at those tools like hungry dogs fighting for scraps. This is going to sound very arrogant of me, and I genuinely don't mean for it to sound this way. I'm not trying to sound superior to anyone else, but I'm going to say it because it's 100% true. Many people watching and listening today are caught up in archontic control. The techno-oligarchs have given all of us the tools to imprison ourselves with. And it's not our fault. It's just not. It's done deliberately in order to allow us to willingly guide ourselves into a loss of people power. And unless you're exactly aware of what's going on and how this is being done to you, you can't see it. You think you're doing the right thing. So don't blame yourself for a second. You didn't know. But you're going to know in a minute. And the reason for that is because I know, and I'm going to share it with you. As soon as I discovered this, as soon as I knew, I released myself from archontic control. It wasn't easy, and I was conflicted for a little while. But now I'm free. I'm 100% free. I made a decision immediately following the November election to do things differently. And it was very hard. I wavered back and forth because I was a little bit afraid of losing my income, to be honest. And that was my material temptation. I was worried that I am the only person in control of whether I sink or swim. And if I change and everyone deserts me, then I don't have anything and I don't know what to do. So my ability to stay afloat was my temptation to waver. And so there was a part of me that kept questioning myself. Is what I'm feeling right? Is my intuition right? It's telling me that I'm doing something wrong here. It's telling me that I'm being controlled and that I need to get out of this cycle of control. But am I making a mistake? It was really hard. So it took me a few months to finally do it completely, to release myself from what I deep down inside knew intuitively was controlling me. It was very hard. But I knew I had made the right decision as soon as I let go completely, because it had been weighing really heavily on me for a couple of months. But as soon as I let go, I instantly felt better in a way that I am having trouble describing. I instantly felt like I just felt better. I did. One day I will find the eloquence to be able to describe it to you in a way that will make me sound like some kind of a guru entity. But you know what? I'm not. I'm just a human, and it's hard for me to describe, but I'm going to tell you now I feel 100% free. I had made the decision, and I knew it was right before, but because I kept questioning myself and because I was concerned, I was feeling really uneasy because I wasn't sure if I could trust myself. But the moment I let go, all of that discomfort disappeared straight away. So for those of us, there are lots of things happening right now that can fall into the category of our loss of power and confusion and us being guided down a certain path. And some of these things we are not in control of. But there are some things that we are in control of so long as we understand what's happening and then trust ourselves to get it right. But for those of us who are listening and watching this show today, this is one of those key examples of how we're being controlled. And it relates to the techno-oligarchy. Okay, so the mechanism for control. At the moment, social media and news is splitting the mindset inside America into two distinct camps. We know this, right? You've got your right wing and your left wing. More and more, the division is permeating families and workplaces and clubs, and it's redirecting people towards consuming information that's friendlier, from like-minded sources. The current polarization is being caused by viewing choices that guide social media algorithms that affect news and special interest discussions on any and every topic under the sun. If you are interested in the world of UAPs and ETs, then your algorithmic choices are guiding you into a polarized camp. If you enjoy psychics and tarot card readings, then your algorithmic choices are guiding you into a polarized camp. If you are a news junkie, then you're probably firmly embedded into a polarized camp. Regardless of your camp, and there are lots of camps, right? Not just those ones. But regardless of your camp, your algorithmic choices are guiding you into an echo chamber that prevents you from escaping the prison that you are building yourself. And this is the method by which the techno-oligarchy is taking over. There is no point, I know this is going to sound unpopular, but there is no point being part of a politics-based resistance. The techno-oligarchy wants you to be in a group of dedicated resistors against the opposing party. And they want that opposing party to be in a dedicated group that is resisting and opposing you, because it puts you in a camp, a resistance camp, and you are working hard to diminish your own power. The oligarchs are taking over your life and your country by giving you the tools that you can do, that you can use to be able to do it to yourself. And if this trend continues without any changes, the following things are going to happen, and some of them are already happening. When you hear how many of them are already happening, I hope you take this as seriously as I did when it occurred to me. So, here's a list. Families are going to start to fall apart. It's already happening. People are going to lose their sense of empathy towards people who are different from themselves. Already happening. People are going to lose track of how to find common ground on issues in which they can work together. Already happening. People are going to increasingly consume information from like-minded sources. Now, that's not a feeding mechanism. That's not feeding information into yourself. That's a starving mechanism. You're actually starving yourself with that. So, for example, if you love vitamin C, and vitamin C is certainly good for you, right? Oranges are full of vitamin C. But if you eat nothing but oranges, sure, you're going to get a lot of vitamin C, but you're not going to get the full range of things you need, which means you're going to become weaker and weaker, and then eventually you'll die. Because vitamin C will not keep you alive all by itself. In order to stay alive and strong and healthy, you need to eat from a broad spectrum of sources. You need the entire range of vitamins inside your system. It's the same when it comes to feeding and nourishing your body, your mind, and your spirit. People's existing beliefs will become reinforced relentlessly, which narrows their perspective and causes a dissension rather than ascension of the human spirit. So the human spirit descends rather than ascends when you kind of narrow your perspective and allow that narrowed perspective to continuously be reinforced inside your echo chamber. And people do, they become trapped inside an echo chamber that reinforces their existing beliefs and that dismisses the opposing perspectives. This increases the polarization that's existing around you and exacerbates everything else that I've just talked about. It's happening right now. The increase in polarization directly undermines the democratic process of people power. It directly undermines the populist concept of people power. The people become weaker rather than stronger. The increased weakness of people power makes it harder to reach consensus on anything. This is happening right now. Winning arguments becomes more important than finding solutions. This is already happening right now. And when there are no solutions found, the people learn to distrust what they can see, which is the existing institutions. The institutions aren't the ones that are doing it. It's the lack of solutions because it's the lack of consensus. This is already happening. When the institutions are not supported, they begin to fail. This is happening. Failure of the country's institutions causes the entire political system to fail. This is happening. As all of this intensifies, extremist ideologies on both sides of the spectrum begin to grow. And extremists are exploiters. They exploit division in order to gain support and push their agenda. It's happening right now. Extremism leads to radicalization and violence. And then, when the violence occurs, what happens? The country's not going to just let it happen. Someone has to stop it. So who's going to stop it? Because the institutions are failing, the government is failing. Who's going to stop the violence? And what is going to be the mechanism for regaining control? Control over the people who've become weaker because they are so divided. So this is my take on this, and it is in line with what was predicted thousands of years ago. I believe that the people are being guided into a place where they are going to become weaker and have less control over their own lives. The way that this is going to be done is to deliberately divide us and then give us the technology that points us into the direction of a short-term, feel-good time waster. It could be anything. Whatever it is, pick your poison. While we're busy feeling good for a moment, which obviously wears off very quickly, and we're convincing ourselves that we're good and they're bad and we're right and they're wrong, whoever they are, right? Well, the dividing lines around us are getting deeper and deeper. They're being carved out by algorithms owned by the very same techno-oligarchs who are encouraging us to be divided. And meanwhile, they are learning all about us with the free AI that everyone has access to now. And that AI is being trained to become our prison wardens. The archontic control mechanisms acknowledged by the Gnostics thousands of years ago are coming to fruition, and the techno-oligarchs are consolidating power. It's not just Elon Musk, okay? He's just one of the tech giant types that are out there. I do kind of suspect that the relationship that he has with Donald Trump will sour. I also think that Steve Bannon is smarter than Elon Musk, just my humble opinion. I'm not a fan of Steve Bannon's, but I do know that he's a very clever man. And I also believe that Steve Bannon knows that this is happening. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also knows that it's happening, because she's no idiot either. And I know that it's happening. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one. This is not news. It was predicted by the Gnostics, but it was also predicted by the Christians. And it was predicted by the Hopi tribe, the indigenous Americans. And it was predicted by many others. Many of these groups I have already covered on this show. And next week, I'm hoping to interview yet another voice an entirely different voice, maybe an unexpected voice. And this voice may very well relate to the extraterrestrial piece of the puzzle, who also knows this. I must admit that I was actually quite surprised after reading some information provided by the representative that I'm meeting with next week about just how much they understand about what's taking place from an entirely different perspective. Now, I'm not a very big player when it comes to this fight on behalf of humanity. I'm just a little guy with a little voice. But I'm on your side. And you can take that to the bank. And you know why? because I never asked you what side you were on. I just confirmed that I'm on your side because you're a person and I'm on the side of humanity. I am welcoming voices onto this show, voices that want to help us to stay together, to consolidate and maintain our people power. I'm welcoming voices from the right, voices from the left. Every religious group on the planet is welcome here. Every non-religious group, representatives from the world of science and parapsychology and traditional psychology, anything. I don't care where you come from or what your belief system is or what your discipline is. If you are a wisdom or have a wisdom to share that you think will help people to understand how we are in this together and why it's important that we recognize this and deliberately step outside of our echo chambers, which are tools that have been given to us to allow us to guide ourselves into our own destruction. And if you've got wisdom that can help humanity keep its power over its own existence, then please do get in touch. My contact information can be found through the radio show. It's also on the homepage of the Ellie Dreams and Under channel on YouTube. And there's basic bio information as well here in the description for today's episode and links to various other sites as well. The Christians say that the beast will rise with 7 heads. Do you know that the Gnostics also say that our Conti control has 7 heads, even though they don't agree on much else? We're going to talk about that another day because otherwise I'll get started and I'll never stop. And I am pretty certain, just to finish this off, that the Antichrist is an energy that is anti-Christ because humanity is Christ. And the non-human energy is the Antichrist energy, the beast, manifesting as technology. Everything is marrying together, and it really wasn't that hard to be able to connect the dots. Ultimately, I think we're going to be okay, because when we have no other choice, we will unite. But really, does it have to wait until then? And what is it going to take before that happens? Wake up. This is Ellie, and you can find me at Ellie Dreams and Under on YouTube. Remember your promo code Ellie to get 30% off your KJRA membership.